In the previous episode, 9-year-old Tang Wulin began his blacksmith test, observed by Grandmaster Sen Yue. He immediately astonished examiners by choosing heavy silver, a metal typically reserved for higher ranks. Tang Wulin then effortlessly wielded a pair of 40-kilogram 1,000 refined tungsten hammers, showcasing incredible strength and focus. His masterful forging quickly convinced Sen Yue and the other examiners of his extraordinary talent. He successfully completed the forging, demonstrating a level of skill far beyond his years and earning their profound respect. His exceptional performance hinted at a promising future in the world of blacksmithing, leaving the Grandmaster deeply impressed by the young boy's potential. Harmonizing was when the blacksmith builds on a resonance with the piece of metal he was crafting, until it reaches a state of fusion between both. It was in this state that the chance of producing an excellent product became higher. Every single work of forging contained both the blacksmith's feelings as well as their ideals. Mu Chen didn't enter the forging chamber because he couldn't, even as the president. Nobody was allowed into the chamber when during a blacksmith's ranking test. Entering might falter the blacksmith's concentration, thus resulting in their failure or even casting a shadow on them. How interesting. Mu Chen once again returned to the front desk, asked the staff, "What is the name of the examinee in room 3? The staff, upon his inquiry, checked through the list and answered almost immediately. The examinee's name is Tang Wulin. He was recommended here by Grandmaster Sen Yue. He is currently being tested. As he spoke, he passed Mu Chen a copy of Tang Wulin's forms. When Sen Yue's name was mentioned, he smiled. I say, who else other than someone recommended from Old Sen would be able to enter a state of harmonization in the midst of an examination? 9 years old. With an expression of disbelief, he turned his eyes towards the staff. Are you sure this isn't a mistake of some sort? This examinee is only 9 years old? The staff confirmed immediately. That's right. We had doubts about it previously too. I couldn't believe that a child that young would come for a ranking test. Mu Chen was stupefied. For a child his age, he must be taking the first-rank blacksmith's test? Beep beep. Mu Chen removed the sole communicator from his waist belt and answered the call. Daddy, I'm ready. Are you coming? I'm in room 6. I'll be there shortly. Though he still had doubts, it didn't matter as much as his daughter. Mu Chen quickened his steps towards room 6. Time's up, the surveyor announced in a weird-sounding voice. Dang, Tang Wulin finished off his last hammer strike and retracted both his hammers. With a flash of light, his pair of hammers vanished into his heavy silver rings. His chest rose and fell gently. Tang Wulin seemed to be slightly short of breath, his cheeks scarlet with a blush, and sweat was glistening from his forehead. But that was all. The forging room was once again silent, albeit only for a short time. While the surveyor had her attention on the piece of heavy silver, Sen Yue directed his gaze to Tang Wulin's eyes. In Tang Wulin's eyes, Sen Yue thought he caught a hint of a glimmering silverish light that had been emitted from the heavy silver. Though the forging process had ended, Tang Wulin's focus was still in its initial stage. He believed that the child would one day grow up to become a peerless individual should he stay on the path. Heavy silver, purification exceeding 100 refinements, volume reduction of 7%, state of purification, 100 refined, 3 times. The surveyor announced precisely after a careful inspection of the piece of metal. If the forging was done by a grandmaster blacksmith, getting the heavy silver to such a state wouldn't mean much. This forging, however, was done by a mere 9-year-old child whose body had not even hit puberty yet. It was an incredible feat from this child. The evaluation has passed. The surveyor announced, her gaze directed towards Sen Yue. Sen Yue broke into a bitter smile. Mang Tian did this on purpose. The surveyor was shocked upon hearing Sen Yue's remarks. This kid, he's a disciple of Mang Tian? Sen Yue nodded his head. I couldn't believe it either, but I now confirm that the kid is eligible for the second-rank test. The surveyor considered Sen Yue's comment before turning towards Tang Wulin. Kid, other than metal purification, do you have other skills? It was then that Tang Wulin awakened from his carefree forging state. However, his only faults were hammering too lightly while using the 1,000 refined tungsten hammers, and the forging process ended a little earlier than he would have liked it to. If sufficient time was given, he was sure he could complete the 1,000 refinements. "I can forge some basic small and medium-sized components," Tang Wulin described earnestly. This didn't surprise Sen Yue since Tang Wulin previously mentioned it, and even Mang Tian agreed that Tang Wulin was capable of receiving jobs himself. "Please forge a medium-sized component," the surveyor said with a deep voice, "and if you manage to succeed, you will be promoted to the second rank." The requirements to be a second-rank blacksmith was simply to forge a medium-sized component and to have the ability to refine rare metals. Tang Wulin's previous purification process was excellent, so he only needed to forge some components now. "Yes," Tang Wulin answered before immediately beginning to forge the component. The pair of 1,000 refined tungsten hammers reappeared, and rhythmic hammering sounded out once again. The surveyor was about to call out and tell Tang Wulin that he could use common metals to pass the test, but was silenced by a glance from Sen Yue. He wanted to see how well a 9-year-old child could perform this task. As he hammered the chunk of heavy silver again, a surge of happiness filled Tang Wulin's heart. Within his heart, he felt as though he was reunited with his friends. At his endless pounding, the chunk of metal produced a crisp hum, as if in response to his hammering. Tang Wulin's hammering speed gradually increased. Under his hammer's pounding, the metal started to change. With every strike of his hammer, it bounced off the metal even higher. Afterwards, Tang Wulin would add even more force into his next strike. The heavy silver gradually formed into a circular-shaped medium component under his constant pounding. The hammering process that Sen Yue witnessed was one without any faults, as if every strike had its place and every move was natural. In his eyes, this was the textbook's ideal of forging. This child's foundation skills were unmatched. Even if he were to be compared with 18 or 19-year-olds with an apprenticeship of more than 8 years, he would still surpass them by far. Though in this forging process, Tang Wulin simply hammered the metal without any superfluous techniques, it extruded an abnormal feeling of pureness to the bystanders. Generally, small components would be used in mecha joints, and medium components would be inlaid within the main body of the mecha. Tang Wulin had crafted a semicircular component, an important component within the knee joint of a mecha. Joint protection components were most susceptible to wear and tear, however. This also made them the most suitable to be used for soul guide arrays. Heavy silver was a good conductor for transmitting soul power. Thus, forging the joint component out of heavy silver would be the most appropriate. Tang Wulin had indeed considered these points prior to his forging. Another hour passed by before Tang Wulin produced a semicircular component that was free from any defects and brought it up to both Sen Yue and the surveyor for their assessment. The two of them were even more speechless than before. "Masters, did I pass the test?" Tang Wulin couldn't be more proud with his piece of work. In fact, this was his first time forging a component with heavy silver. When he recalled the past, Tang Wulin thought that the only flaw to his work was that the component was not 1,000 refinemed. He was confident that he would have been able to 1,000 refine it. After his previous 1,000 refinements, he discovered that his understand of forging had gone up by a level. After forging heavy silver again, he felt that it was simply wonderful. When Tang Wulin walked out of the forging room, his face was painted with joy. It wasn't because of the recognition from both masters, nor was it because he had risen up to a second-rank blacksmith. Rather, he was euphoric from the sum of 10,000 Federation coins he received from the heavy silver component he had forged. One can actually make such a huge fortune from forging rare metals. Sen Yue had informed him, prior to his exit, to report back again to the Blacksmith Association in 2 days' time to receive his blacksmith's badge, and to start receiving jobs from the association. "Mang Tian," the call to his old acquaintance finally got through. Mang Tian's voice was just as indifferent as the time they last spoke. "Where did you find yourself such a treasure?" Sen Yue spoke into his device impatiently. Mang Tian replied plainly, "What are you talking about? Who else do you think I am referring to? Your 9-year-old, second-rank disciple. What's more shocking, he just forged a component directly with heavy silver." With his young age, he could definitely master the 1,000 refinements within a few years of serious training. With that, he would be good on his way towards a grandmaster blacksmith. How did you train this child? Hey, can you say something? Sen Yue was not pleased with the lack of response he got from Mang Tian. I have nothing to say. That child was born with innate divine strength, and he has a diligent character. That's all. Mang Tian still spoke plainly. Sen Yue snapped back at Mang Tian's explanation. Was your intention to brandish this kid's abilities at me when you recommended him here? Yes, Mang Tian acknowledged his true intention. Speak, what are your conditions for you to give that child to me? Since you will be at the deserted, glory-bound city most of the time, do you even have time to guide your disciple? He would be better off if you let him come with me. I will guide him carefully if you trust me. I'm hanging up, bastard. Sen Yue almost dropped his soul communicator out of rage. Teacher, were you looking for me? At that very moment, a youngster in his 20s walked into Sen Yue's room. What blacksmith rank are you at? How many years have you been under me? Can't you even complete the 1,000 refinements? The youngster, while in a state of loss, was unfortunately the target of all of Sen Yue's anger. This master of his was usually known for his good temper. Tang Wulin was, however, clueless of the impact his outstanding ability had on the others, and he was on his way back to the academy. Take it! Tang Wulin pushed forth the bagful of 10,000 Federation coins to Zai Zai, who was propped up on his bed. The bruise from Tang Wulin's punch had not subsided. Zai Zai eyed him coldly. Are you trying to run away from the match? Tang Wulin shook his head in reply. I couldn't pay up previously because I did not have any coins. Since I ruined most of the property, I don't think you should be paying for all of it. Here is 10,000 Federation coins. I will pay you back the other 10,000 Federation coins when I have them. I am a man of my words, and since I have accepted your offer, I will be there tomorrow after school. You can set the location. Tang Wulin left the bunch of coins next to Zai Zai and headed for his bed after stating his intentions. Zhou Zhangxi and Yun Zhao exchanged a glance as they observed the exchange from the top bunks. Ever since his defeat against Tang Wulin in the steamed bun eating contest, Zhou Zhangxi's attitude towards Tang Wulin had changed. Yun Zhao, on the other hand, was curious at how Tang Wulin managed to produce the 10,000 Federation coins. It seemed impossible for him to get such huge sum within this short span of time. Tang Wulin entered a meditative state easily after moving into his cross-legged posture on his bed. In fact, today was his first time using his martial soul in battle. He didn't have any experience in these matters, and this was even the first true battle he had been in. Tang Wulin felt that Zai Zai was a formidable person. If he hadn't used his blue-silver grass's soul skill, his skills alone wouldn't stand a chance in withstanding Zai Zai. From the fight earlier today, he gained some understanding of his own martial soul too. He recalled the advice his teacher had given him and agreed that he truly needed to improve his control over his blue-silver grass. Zai Zai, however, merely lay down on his bed. His mind was filled with images of the match earlier today as well, specifically on his inability to cut the grass with his light dragon dagger. Is Tang Wulin's martial soul really just blue-silver grass? Did I underestimate the ability of Tang Wulin's trash martial soul? I will show him my true colors in the match tomorrow. I will make him pay for that punch. As he thought this, Zai Zai touched his swollen cheeks, reigniting his heart's fury. Meditation should be done prior to and after dinner. After all, the clumsy bird flies early for the forest. This saying had left a deep impression in Tang Wulin's mind. Dawn. Tang Wulin woke up as soon as the first rays of sunlight poked at him through the windows. A night of meditation did help in recovering some of his soul power. As soon as he entered rank 10, he had felt a distinct difference in the time needed to regain his energy. At the same time, he would need more soul power to advance to the next stages. This required him to use far more time to accumulate the amount. As he got off his bed, his gaze rested unintentionally on the occupant within the lower bunk of the other set of beds across the room. Zai Zai, who seemed to be meditating, opened his eyes suddenly. Both pairs of eyes locked for a few moments. Zai Zai's gaze was frosty, whereas Tang Wulin had a look of indifference. Shortly after, Tang Wulin broke his gaze and headed for the shower. In his opinion, Zai Zai was just another wealthy city kid. He gave off an image of bossiness, assertiveness, and insolence. Tang Wulin would rather make friends with Zhou Zhangxi than the rich city kid. After finishing his morning shower, there was nothing else to stop him from the most important activity of all, mealtime. However, Tang Wulin was unaware that his previous challenge in steam bun eating had earned him the nickname of Rice Bucket, even though he hadn't even started his journey in the academy. As he woke up earlier than others, he was greeted with an empty dining hall. Within the hall were the same 3 windows. Breakfast was, like previous meals, categorized into 3 categories. Tang Wulin naturally headed for the 3rd window, which provided free food. Breakfast was a spread of milk, eggs, sausages, bread, and vegetables. Tang Wulin helped himself and piled up a pyramid's worth of food on his plate before leaving for an empty table at the corner to devour his food. The dining hall's chef recognized Tang Wulin for his record-breaking appetite and was worried that the child's stomach could not take up all the food. But he now knew that the child was doing fine when he caught view of Tang Wulin's actions through the window. Zai Zai entered the dining hall just when Tang Wulin started with his meal. Like Tang Wulin, his mind had already been made up and he headed straight for the first window, collecting a plateful of food as well. One would think that the food on Zai Zai's plate was similar to Tang Wulin's from a mere glance. A closer inspection, however, would make one realize the difference. Take, for instance, the milk. It was not just any milk, but one that was taken from a soul beast bred in captivity. As with the other food on his plate, they contained a higher amount of nutrients, all from various origins. But if one were to compare the portions of rice consumed between the two, he would realize that Tang Wulin's portion was as much or even more than 10 times that of what Zai Zai had on his plate. Though both of them were seated far apart, each in solitude, Zai Zai kept glancing occasionally in Tang Wulin's direction. Tang Wulin was, however, concentrated on the breakfast before him. As the sun rose high, the opening ceremony started.